Hi there. Welcome back to the Sweet Life Entrepreneur podcast, especially those of you guys who have been with us for 6 years. I appreciate your listenership so much. In this particular show, we are continuing our series all about LinkedIn, how to generate leads on LinkedIn, how to use LinkedIn, really the best way for your business. And this one is all about how to use LinkedIn events to generate a maximum number of leads. So if you're in this place where you are a subject matter expert, a coach, or a consultant, you, by the way, are the exact people that this show and our company is built for. And everything that we're doing here is to tap in and help you uncover strategies that you can take away. As a matter of fact, this podcast has been known for delivering proven business trainings and strategies that other coaches will charge you thousands for. So you're certainly in the right place. Now, if you have been trying to use LinkedIn events like me, frankly, I've been doing LinkedIn events, but now that I have been through this episode that you're about to hear, I realized that I was missing a lot of details in the steps. And so Jen Corcoran, who is our expert here on the show today, is a queen when it comes to LinkedIn lead generation. And so she's going to actually unpack the steps of how to correctly set up a LinkedIn event. Did you know that you can actually create a LinkedIn event from your company page and connect and collect email addresses? I had no idea. But there are certainly pros and cons to that because you usually have less followers on your company page than you do a personal page. So in this show, we're going to unpack all things LinkedIn events, and we are going to take you through how to set it up, where to put it, how to communicate before the event. And then I asked Jen a couple of really specific questions about paid events. And those of you guys who have like paid lead magnets or paid live virtual events, even if they're low ticket items, how do those work with LinkedIn events, and what is the strategy behind that? So at the end of this show, you are going to know the 3 steps to actually set up, program, and fill your LinkedIn events. Jen even talks about how she gets thousands of invites out from her LinkedIn account to attend her events. And she breaks down her communication processes and how she actually doesn't spend hours. That just seems like it would take forever to me. And she unpacked how it doesn't actually take that long to connect further with people on LinkedIn through direct messaging in the most clear, non-sleazy, genuine way possible. And we're going to unpack all that here on the show. So if you'd like to dive in, stay tuned with me here, and you're going to have all of the show notes by visiting sweetlifeco.com. This is episode number 306. So you can just click on the podcast, click on episode number 306, and everything that you have been told will be waiting there for you. So glad you're here. Let's go ahead and dive in. Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in with us here. This is my friend Jennifer, and I met Jen because I actually convinced her to come in and teach a masterclass to our clients last spring. She was absolutely incredible, and everybody loved her, and she was teaching about newsletters at the time. And so she has definitely become a go-to LinkedIn person for myself and my team and for our clients as well. And so I'm really glad that we are bringing her here on the Sweet Life Entrepreneur podcast, because I need to learn a lot about what Jen is talking about here today. Jen, you want to take a sec and just give a little bit of background and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be on this podcast with you.
Thank you.
So if people don't know me, I'm a LinkedIn consultant and I specialize with helping mainly introverted, sensitive and empathic female entrepreneurs. So my approach is a bit more sensitive than the main kind of hustle hype approach. So I'm more about feeling in integrity and feeling in flow. And I love events. In my past life, I was an event manager, so I genuinely love connecting people. And I think LinkedIn events is an amazing feature. It's probably my favorite feature and bit of content in terms of ROI. So I'm really excited to be chatting about it today with you, because I don't think enough people tap into the power of the event feature or know how to like find it or leverage it. So yeah, I'm really excited to be chatting about it.
I am excited too, because I was just sharing with you because, before we recorded here, that I just posted an event about a free event that we're doing. And so I just created it. And exactly as you said, the process of going back and finding it and
Yeah.
seeing where it was in the actual LinkedIn interface. First of all, that was confusing to me.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, to be completely honest, I really don't have a full blown event strategy to promote events on LinkedIn. So I was really excited that you agreed to come on and talk about that. So let's start out by chatting about the LinkedIn interface and just really even how do people set up an event?
Yeah. So you're right. It's not very intuitive. I personally wish there was like a tab at the very top menu that was for events, but there isn't. So the easiest way to do it is on the desktop versus the mobile app, and just bring up your profile. Click on your home feed, and if you scroll down on the left hand side, you'll see various shortcuts. So you'll see like recent shortcuts, so things you've been looking at recently. You'll see groups, and then below you'll see events, and you'll see a little plus sign, and that's how you start to create your event from your profile. It works pretty much the same on your company page. You have to kind of scroll and find it down in the menu. It's not obvious. But once you're there, the good news is once you click through on the plus, they're very easy to populate. It's basically putting up a nice cover image. I always create them with Canva. And then it's literally the name of the event, the date, the time, the duration, a little description, and the link. So pretty easy to set up. And you can tag in any relevant speakers if you're doing an event, or a webinar, you can tag them in, which is great. And I think the difference really from doing it on your profile and your page, they're basically the same, but from a business page, you get an additional option of getting people to sign to and register, so you get their email. You can't do it from your personal profile, but on the company page, you can set up an extra registration form. So they have to fill that out to be able to join the live or watch the replay. And then of course you can download their emails after, so you can email them. So that's the beauty of doing it from your page over your profile. And on the flip side, people buy people more, and you're going to have a lot more connections on your personal profile. So if you're sending it from your company page and you've got a completely different name, people mightn't be as quick to accept, whereas if they know you, they're going to probably accept through your profile. So they're both great. The page is especially great if you want to download emails.
Okay, so now I have a question about that. Would you recommend, because with our event and with all the events I've done, I set them up on my personal profile. Would you recommend creating two events or duplicating it and one from the company page, or maybe creating, because I love the idea of getting the emails, because that's what we're going to talk about next. The events we usually host are in Zoom or someplace else, and there's an offline link, and there's another, it's like 2 or 3 degrees away for people to actually register and get to the event. So first of all, do you recommend creating the event in two places or not?
I think one is enough. If you really want to download the emails, do it from your company page. You'll always have that option. I think if you duplicate, it just gets a bit messy, and it's just a bit more time consuming for you. And
Right.
yeah, I think in relation to the external link, that when you set up a LinkedIn event page, you've got various drop down options. So you can either do an external link to something in person, like an Eventbrite, or it could be a Zoom, a virtual event, or you've got the option of LinkedIn Live or a LinkedIn Audio. So when it's an external link, like a webinar, or you kind of always have to nudge your attendees. So I think the first kind of nudge is in the description part of the event. Put the event link at the very top and go, hey, have you like clicked all the way through? This is the link. And then
Got it.
not be shy to click on manage attendees and DM them all. And I know it sounds like quite labor intensive, but it's really not. If you have a little short and sweet kind of message like, hey, Mary, thanks for signing up for my event. Just want to make sure that you've signed all the way through. Here's the link. Excited to see you there. And you just literally bang that out to the attendees. It doesn't take that long. And it's a great way to make sure that they have gone all the way through, because 50% of the people won't. And they'll be like, hey, oh God, I didn't realize. Thanks for that. Or, you'll start a conversation with all your attendees. So it just gets everybody excited because with the event feature, it's not super intuitive. People can accept an event and then they can forget because they can't really find out where are those events. So I think it's a great thing to do, is to definitely personally DM people before, and I always DM them after as well.
Such great tips. Okay, so let's go back to kind of unpacking this step by step. So it is okay to have offline events on LinkedIn, and so I think most events that, unless it's a LinkedIn audio or something, or even a LinkedIn live, yeah, so they're going to have the external link there. Great tip to add the external link to the event description, not just
Yeah,
leaving it in there that says link to the event. I'm going to go back right away and make sure our event is updated to include that. So yeah, so that next step really is DMing people that said they're going to attend.
yeah,
And I love your quick little script that you said, "Hey, I can't wait to see you. Just wanted to make sure you went all the way through and registered." Do you find that people are open to that? I don't like direct messages on LinkedIn, so I'm always super careful before I DM somebody. And I probably am an overcorrection of anti DMing. So I think I'm on the total opposite side of that. But I do see the value in that. In it, is that one of your secret recipes to get so many people to actually follow through and come to your event?
yeah, definitely. And I think, most people will remember that they signed up if it was something they wanted, that they are grateful and they'll come back and say, oh, thank you, sorry, I missed that, and then it just gets you into a nice, genuine conversation of, oh, really looking forward to it. Or, people will say, oh, I've shared it with my friend, or I've shared it in a group. And you're like, wow. So you start to get into a nice conversation. And I think of it as like warm outreach. They've signed up, whether they remember or not. And even if a lot of people will come back and say, do you know what? I can't make it now. Something's come up, and I'll say, don't worry, I'll DM you the replay after. So again, it's another nice conversation, and you have another opportunity to touch base after. Only rarely do I get people go, oh, I never signed up for that. And I'll be like, oh, you did. It's the event page. I can send you the replay, and, don't worry about it. So it never goes awkward. I don't think anybody like feels like they're being sold to or anything, because it's generally some kind of a training event. And even if they don't remember, I position it in a good way that they go, do you know what? Actually, I think I
Mhm.
will go, or I will
Right.
check out the place. So yeah, I think it's always like warm outreach. It doesn't feel spammy. They've signed up for whatever reason. They like you. They like their company. Your company. They like the topic. So for some good reason, split decision, they accepted the invite, or they've actually seen you posting about it and actively sought to join the event page. So yeah, with an event, I do promote them in various ways. Of course, we've got the LinkedIn event page, but I will always like email my list. I'll always share on LinkedIn anyway, on my personal home feed, on my company page, in my LinkedIn group. So I try to really share about the event so that people are, familiar with it. They're not like, what is this?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, is making sure that we're feeding it. We're not just totally relying on LinkedIn, that we're using all of our marketing channels, especially when we're doing events that are really an important part of our marketing and campaign and launches. So what about, so we have the event. Do you share the event multiple times between you when you created it to your personal feed? So if somebody's having an event in, let's say 10 days from now, about
Yeah.
how many times would you reshare that event back to your feed saying, "Hey, don't forget I'm hosting this cool event"?
Um, well, LinkedIn themselves, they kind of advocate that you create the event page about 2 to 4 weeks in advance. So as much kind of, notice that you can. For me, I would probably just share the event once or twice. I create separate graphics that would probably have more impact than the actual event page. So I'd share it in different ways, but it's the same content, but it will look visually different. And the main thing for me is I will invite my first degree connections to the event page manually. So you can invite 1,000 first degree connections every 5 days, which sounds like a lot, but there is a hacky way of really inviting people quick onto your event page, where you can invite them at like 50 at a go. So when you kind of click into the filters, my favorites, one is school, one is company, these don't really work for me when I'm targeting like coaches or consultants. I target by location. If it was like a local event, you can do that, or I mainly target by industry. So I select, you know, the right one for me. It's usually professional training and coaching. And then at the very top, LinkedIn will populate. It will start to bring up all the coaches and trainers and everything. And you can manually do one by one, which is very like time consuming, boring. But at the very top left, there's a little box. And if you click that, it selects 50 at a time. So if you're doing
Wow. Okay.
50, you really can invite 1,000 people really quickly. At the moment, I'm running a virtual summit for sensitive people in October, so I've got an event page for that, and I've set it up a few weeks in advance. So I've already invited, I think, 3,000 people. Every week I'm like, oh, I've got my credit back. Let me invite another 1,000 more, because that's the way I get maximum people. And I think if you're lucky, you get about 10% accept, which is really good if you think of like, the rate of kind of exchange of an email list. It's it's pretty good. So yeah, I wouldn't just rely on just creating the page and posting it and that's it, because you're only going to get a handful of people, whereas the way I do it, manually inviting them, I always get hundreds of people on every event, and it's hundreds of leads. So it's worth it. And then if I've got a speaker, I say to them, can you invite 1,000 people from your network? And I make them a tiny little training showing them how to do it. And then it just gets maximum bums on seats.
Wow. Okay. I was going through with our event and like looking at everybody's title, sorting them by title, like click, click, click. I think I
Yeah.
sat there for a good 45 minutes and only invited what I felt like was a ton of people, which was 88 that I felt. And I was skipping people. I'm like, no, they're not the perfect person. So this makes me feel much better that there's a much more efficient way. And another reason why I was so excited to have this conversation, because I was thinking this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
How do I do this? I have very little time to be doing this. Okay, very cool. Now, so wait, I have one question here. What about events that are not free? What about paid events? What about events that are, paid?
Um, if I'm honest, it's the same kind of process. I still would invite 1,000 of my first week connections and still have to nudge people to sign up manually to the link. Most people, well, 50% of the people will not click through. They'll think they're signed up, and you're like, no, you have to click through this particular link. So, and the
Mhm.
same, I would have different visuals. So I don't think I would do anything different. If it was a paid event, I would definitely want access to everybody's email. So I would definitely do it on my company page more so than my profile. But I think other than that, it would just be the exact same way of marketing it and just giving yourself as much lead up time. Like I
Lead up
definitely
time.
would do 2 to 4 weeks. There have been some free lives that I've done, a week out. But with a paid, I would definitely do 2 to 4 just to drive that kind of visibility and reach, and not just rely on, a few days. Whereas,
Mhm.
for a free event,
Makes
you can
sense.
get a lot of people who are jumping on at the last minute, so it's a bit different.
And with paid events, because they think that almost all of them are going to be free because that's just the way it
Yeah,
works, really. So with paid events, I'm guessing it's probably important in the description to say the cost of this ticket is, $50 or $500 or whatever it is. Do you feel like LinkedIn is a good place to also market paid trainings in the
uh,
events page, or really just lead
yeah.
gen?
Mm, I've done both. I think I primarily lead with free, and I think, like you said, people are used to free, and then they come along to a live or a webinar, and then you kind of plug your paid services there. I think in general, I do see a lot more free events on LinkedIn, whether it's a LinkedIn Live or an audio. You kind of give that free value first, and then they buy into you. I think you could do a paid one, but you wouldn't want to be doing it all the time, because people will just feel like you're advertising. But if it's like a one-off, if it's like maybe it's something you're doing, once or twice a year, I see no harm in it. But I think if you were to do it all the time, people will just get in their head that you're someone that's constantly selling. So you want to
Right.
really stand out as somebody who's, giving value. Of course, you can plug sales calls and things at the end of your free stuff.
Mhm.
Of course, you're not going to get as many people onto a page, and it's just sadly it's just the way it is. There's so much stuff online that they like to come in and test out the free first, but I don't see any reason why you can't. I'm thinking of one paid event that I know is being promoted at the moment on LinkedIn, but I don't know if it has an event page. So I'm going to go away and have a look. I've seen people. It's a conference and people are posting about it, and they're definitely saying the price is whatever, £250, and then there's attendees are sharing, but I don't know if they've got an event page. If they do, I'll let you know.
That's fascinating. Yeah, yeah. Send me a message and let me know, because I was thinking about, we have clients and ourselves where sometimes we do paid workshops, paid live events, and sometimes they aren't that much. They're usually $47 to $97 because it pre-qualifies, and buying into, like, even though less people we already know will register for it, but when people pay, they pay attention, and they usually convert into better clients. And so I was just curious about that. And then before, I have a few clients actually that have promoted $1,000 workshops and have done really, really well with that. And that kind of goes into my next question for you. And they're very niche specific, right? These are super specific for a super targeted industry to learn a super specific skill. They aren't just informational, they're actually training skills workshops, and they've done really well with that. And part of what they do, which I want to hear you unpack this too, is it's in the follow up, right? So it's the follow up 24 hours before for people that clicked that they did want to attend but haven't paid the money. And they have like this 24-hour, almost like post cart closing type of a DM that they do. And they say that that does really, really well. So whether it's following up before the event happens or following up afterwards, sharing the replay, you know, I would love to know, first of all, how much time that usually takes you. Obviously, especially if you have 500 people attend your event. And do you have any sort of tips on following up to get people, whether it's to register or to schedule a sales call or just to watch the thing?
Yeah, I would definitely follow up with all of them, and I promise it doesn't take that long. If it's just a short and snappy message and you just bang it out to all the attendees. So I would always, follow up first with the replay, because not everybody has got on. So I would just be like, hi, John, hope you enjoyed the event earlier on. He didn't manage to see it. I couldn't see everyone that was live. Here's the replay. And that's the first message. And then you just start conversations. People come back to you and say, oh, I couldn't because I was with my mom, or I was walking the dog. You hear everything. You start to get into a natural conversation. Or people will say, loved it. And if they loved it, I'll say, oh, what was your biggest takeaway? And then that usually pre-qualifies people, because they usually say, oh, because you said this and I really need
Yeah.
help with that. And then straight away I'm like, did you book one of the sales calls, or here's the link to book? So for me, it's always good to pre-qualify rather than just firing my sales call link at everyone, and they're not the right fit, or it's never going to happen. So yeah, the replay is always the good conversation starter, because even if they were there, some people maybe have to hop off 10 minutes early and they'll be like, oh brilliant, I missed the end. So yeah, just share the replay, get into conversations. It's very rare that people ignore you. I think after you send them something like that, they're like, oh, I'm going to watch it. And then you can touch base a few days later with them all again and just say, hey, I'd love to know, did you watch it? What were your takeaways? So it's that kind of nudging and nurturing, and then, pre-qualifying the right people. And if that's kind of where they want to stop the journey for now, that's fine. You've built a little bit of a relationship. Maybe they're completely new to you, and there's somebody that you can invite to your next event. Others will be, further down the line, they already know they need LinkedIn help, and you're just getting them on a call. But it all happens with the DMs for me. It's always that nurturing before, during, after. You'll get people even while you're doing the event saying, "Where's the link?" And you're like, well, you don't see that obviously till after because you're doing it. You're doing the bloody event, so you're like, well, I can't DM you now. So yeah, it's always the DMs, and if you don't do the DMs, it's a missed opportunity because you're only going to
Right.
get like a handful of people come back to you. Whereas if you DM them all, you're going to get such a good response rate. So yeah, the magic for me is always in the DMs, and it doesn't have to take long. I promise. You just click on manage attendees. It brings them all up, whether they're first degree connections, second, third. You don't need to be connected to them. You can just message them, so they don't need to be a connection, and you just bang out the little
Nice.
message. So I do it always in batches. The way you're doing this podcast, I will just go in and send one message to them all in a batch, step back, and maybe it's the end of the day. Then I'll go in, there's conversations, again, do it in batch. So yeah, I'm not spending all day on it because you'd be driven mad.
For sure. And I that's a good like business basics reminder for me, because now that I'm becoming more active on LinkedIn, I realize I need to like block calendar schedule my LinkedIn time,
Yeah,
because I'm like, leaving the office, going to the kitchen. I feel like all of a sudden the last 5 days I've been sucked in this LinkedIn hole, and I'm like, no, this can't happen. So I definitely need to schedule out my scheduled time in when I'm going to be
yeah,
doing my LinkedIn work. And as we wrap up, I have to say that one of the reasons why I really appreciate you so much, besides the tactics and the strategy and the wisdom that you get, is that you're so real about how you connect with people. And when you talk about how you do messages in the DMs, it feels so good to me. And I think that's why you and I connected. And it frankly doesn't feel like the way that a lot of people do messages, and a lot of messages I have received on LinkedIn. And
yeah,
I really appreciate that about you. And it's something that I would feel good about doing, because it's just a conversation. It's just an
yeah,
actual natural conversation. And there isn't anything pushy about that. So
yeah.
I wanted to share that with our listeners, and just tell you personally, just thank you so much for leading in that way, because it's really, really helpful. So now, one of the things that we wanted to give our listeners today, which doesn't directly relate to LinkedIn events, but is a profile optimization tool. And I really recommend all of you guys go connect with Jen on LinkedIn, and we'll have all of her links and everything in the show notes. And we're also going to connect to this free profile optimization tool, so we can level up your LinkedIn personal brand. Can you talk a little bit about that tool and why that's important?
Yeah, sure. So it's a checklist. It's about 7, 8 pages long, and it just walks you through your profile and areas to optimize so that you're showing up more in search and you're just looking more the part. Because if you do go to an event, your profile really is the gateway to everything. So if you create an event, or you're attending an event, or you're chatting to people who are also attending, people are going to check you out, and they're always going to go, "Who is this person?" So it's like going into any physical event or virtual event. People are always going to check you out. So we want you to be looking good first, and that will give you confidence. And that's really where I started my LinkedIn journey, was optimizing my profile. And when I felt like it really sold me and it felt more me and I looked the part, it
Right.
made me more confident to send DMs, to connect. And for me, I love events on LinkedIn, whether I'm hosting like a LinkedIn Live or an audio or even a Zoom. I always encourage attendees to connect with each other. I will say to all of my, like, if you're going to any of my events, have a look at the other people, because it's a safe container for you to reach out and send those DMs, because they don't always come natural for us. And I think the more you
Yeah.
exercise that muscle, then you're kind of like, it is just a chat. And maybe it's because I'm Irish, but I've always just thought, what is the big deal about LinkedIn? It's literally having a conversation. And I've never thought of networking as networking. I reframed it in my head as, it's having chats with people. And I think so many people build it up like networking is so, serious, so professional. And I think on LinkedIn, especially for business owners, we have the joy of showing up whatever way we want. We're not constrained by our old corporate roles where we had to be a bit more, buttoned up and professional. Whereas now, for me, if anybody DMs me, I love a good GIF. Like, I wouldn't
Yeah.
have been saying that, sending them in my corporate days. It would have been like, best regards. It's, like super formal. And I just think LinkedIn's what you make of it. It's
Yeah.
just, it's like a massive online network where you can have like, networking conversations, little mini events the whole time.
So valuable, so valuable. And so are you. What is the link? If it's pretty link, we'll put it in the show notes anyway. But well, first of all, tell people exactly how to find your profile on LinkedIn. Let's start with that.
Okay, so thanks again, April, for all your lovely words. So yeah, I'm Jen Corcoran. So it's Corcoran. Find me on LinkedIn. My company page on there is called My Super Connector. So yeah, just find me either my personal profile or my company page. You can check out my previous events, stalk them, see if you learn any tips from them.
She's so good, you guys. You totally have to stalk her. And then we'll share the link to the profile upgrade also in the show notes. But do you want to share the link as well? If you know that off the top of your head, too, we can do that here.
Oh, it's a ClickFunnels
Uh,
one. I love
okay. Yeah, I knew it's like an ugly link. I didn't know if we had a pretty link for it.
it.
We'll put it in the show notes for you guys. Everything here, how to connect with Jen. You guys can go over to sweetlifeco.com, click on the podcast, and Jen's episode will be right there on the top. You can also search our podcast website anytime. Just search the word LinkedIn, and this podcast and other podcasts that we have done will populate for you. So there's a ton of resources there for you. Jen, thank you so much. Just appreciate how you've poured into our clients, what you've taught me, and being here on the show. So I really value you and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.